$6 billion in local relief phased in beginning this year until 2024. Now, what are the funds set to go towards? The governor says almost $1 billion is set to support schools, focusing on temporary learning programs to catch up students. There will also be extended unemployment insurance benefits and support for public health, economic recovery, and vulnerable communities. The governor joined by Senator Chris Murphy, who says this is the fifth COVID relief package issued by the federal government, and hopefully the last.
So that we can move on to other very important issues.
There are billions of dollars left over from the American Rescue Plan. Congress is just urging people to allocate this money towards new relief programs in households. And for instance, the Illinois governor has passed a tax relief program this year, and part of that relief will come in the form of a check directly mailed to your mailbox. And unlike the stimulus check sent out by the Fed in the early stages of the crisis, the state's plan will scale based on a person's tax filings. So everybody, those that filed taxes independently and made under $200,000 will be getting at least a $50 check in the mail. And joint filers who brought home less than $400,000 in 2021 will get a $100 check. But the state will send individuals even more money if they have dependents, increasing the total dollar amount by $100 for each dependent. It just caps at 3. That means the maximum amount of any money for an individual filer could get is $350, and the most a single filer can get is $400. So the governor said the budget is signed into law. It means those checks are coming now. There is not a hard date as to when these checks will arrive, but the law states that the Illinois Department of Revenue will finalize the list, and all the data will be determined by tax filings. So those who do not file taxes this year will not be getting a check. In the state of Minnesota, many frontline workers are receiving a one-time payment of $500. It's thanks to a bill signed by the governor. Eligible workers must have worked at least 120 hours in Minnesota between March and June, and were not eligible for remote work. Thousands of checks have already been sent out, but that's not all. The U.S. Department of Education said in a new court filing that student loan default rates are actually dramatically spiking if the Biden administration's loan forgiveness plan is blocked. The warning came as the Department of Justice asked a federal judge to stay an order that has temporarily blocked the Biden administration's relief program. Now, the Education Department said that unless the Education Department is allowed to provide debt relief, we anticipate there could be historically large increases in federal student loan debt and people going into poverty. The Biden administration stopped accepting applications for its student loan forgiveness plan last week after it was called unconstitutional. Meanwhile, 6 Republican states argued in another suit that the president's loan relief program has threatened the future tax revenues and circumvented congressional authority. Their challenge had been restricted by a judge, and now the state appealed and it's in the 8th court. But, according to CNBC, when the U.S. economy was enjoying one of its healthiest periods, problems plagued the federal student loan system. A recent shows that about half of these borrowers were in repayment in 2019. About 25% or 10 million more were in delinquency, and the rest had already applied for a temporary relief program for struggling borrowers, including deferments or forbearances. Federal student loan payments have been paused since March, when the crisis first began. Resuming the bills for more than 40 million Americans will be a massive task, and the Biden administration has hopes to taking care of this. But President Biden announced his plan to cancel student debt as well. And now conservative groups and Republican states move quickly to try to block it. The borrowers must be in jeopardy of defaulting on those whose Biden's student loan forgiveness plan would have been wiped out of their balance entirely. So folks, the administration estimates a policy would do so for around 18 million people. And now I hope that President Biden does more for the American people and sends out stimulus payments before the end of the year. Tell me what you think, everybody, in the comments down below if you think he will do this.
About that. Let's bring in Bob McNally. He is founder and president of Rapidan Energy Group. He's also a former energy advisor to President George W. Bush. Obviously know a lot about this area, both from a company perspective as well as sort of all the political angles and strain right now. Certainly in focus for a lot of American consumers, that sticker shock, that price that they're paying at the pump, and then the ripple effect thereout. It seems only logical that an administration would have some questions for big oil, but give us some education, Bob. I mean, what really can be done? Are profit margins really unacceptable? Why is big oil always looked at as the bad guy here?
You know, those of us in the fraternity and the sorority of former White House energy advisors understand the brutal math of the oil market. And every president we worked for in the last 20 years has confronted this, rising gasoline prices. And the truth is there are no short-term solutions. Oil is very insensitive, or we say sticky, to price on the demand and supply side. You just don't turn it on and off on the spigot. So there are no good solutions. And many of the things the president is doing, other presidents have done before. You want to talk with refiners ahead of refinery season. You want to see.
Do we turn our backs on struggling working families, or do we respond to their pain? We should all be very, very clear. The working class of this country today faces more economic desperation than at any time since the Great Depression of the 1930s.
Elizabeth Warren has revealed her plan that would pull some 4.9 million seniors out of poverty and extend the solvency of the underfunded Social Security benefits. According to Senator Warren, the proposal would lead to a nearly 25% increase in benefits for the bottom half of earners, and a less than 5% increase for people in the top 10% of income distribution in the nation. Warren told reporters, "We need to get our priorities straight. We should be increasing Social Security benefits and asking the richest Americans to contribute their fair share to the program." Senator Warren has also laid out a series of proposals, including ones to end college debt and create universal child care by taxing the wealthy. This is done through a $2.75 trillion tax on American households, making more than $50 million annually. And now a new study released by the Center on Poverty and Social Policy at Columbia University, almost 4 million American children fell into poverty last month after the expanded child tax credit temporarily paused. The lapse of monthly child tax credit payments in January pushed 3.7 million children below the poverty line. And according to federal data, the child poverty rate rose from 12.1% in December to 17% in January. That's an increase of 41%. Researchers have said that while in place, the monthly child tax credit payments buffered family finances amidst the ongoing crisis, increased families' abilities to meet their basic needs, and reduced child poverty and food insufficiency. The $1.9 trillion stimulus bill, signed by the president, increased the amount of money parents receive through the child tax credit to $250 per child between 6 and 17, and $300 for each child younger than 6. The bill also removed work requirements for the child tax credit, and more than 36 million households covering 61 million children received expanded child tax credit payments from July through December last year. And everybody Biden and Democrats are still pushing to extend the expanded credit. But Senate Democrat Joe Manchin has shared with reporters why he is opposed to enhance the credit. Manchin said he would be open to renewing the expanded child tax credit with lower income limits and reimpose work requirements, two major issues for many other Democratic lawmakers. The senator